It's me, the Goblin. Hi.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Mid-Mask channel, where I definitely don't roleplay as a goblin in my spare time. In case you didn't read the title of this video, it's about how to roleplay better. Words will be here, trust me. Roleplay in Dungeons & Dragons is the butter of your toast. What is Dungeons & Dragons without roleplay? I mean, seriously, think about it. Dice rolling, monsters, health bars. Basically just mechanics. Most of the fun comes from the stories, the roleplay, the characters. And that's why I'm here to tell you how to make it better. Without further ado, let's not waste your time. Here are some tips on how to make your roleplay better in Dungeons & Dragons. First things first, when you're making your character, don't make a character that you know you can't roleplay properly. For example, it can be very difficult to roleplay a character who doesn't talk, maybe can't see, maybe can't hear. And if you're not familiar how to do any of those things, you might not have a good time trying to roleplay that character. Or perhaps you chose a very exotic race, and you're also not really sure, the origins of that character, what have you. It can just be difficult to get into their shoes, their mindset. So when making a character, just make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. Think of it like a relationship, a commitment. The next tip, consider your character. And if you haven't considered your character, consider watching whatever corner it appears in, the other video on what you should consider when making your character. Because there's a lot to do with characters and roleplay, they're kind of intertwined. Consider the origins of your character. The origins of your character will sculpt a lot of how they act, who they are, where they're from, etc. For example, imagine you have a nobleman, real uppity, pompous nobleman. Maybe you're playing this as a fighter or a paladin. You serve the god of light and holier than thou. Perhaps entering a chamber filled with, diseased rats might gross out this nobleman, but your rogue in the party, who's a low-time thief who's been in the streets their whole life, they might not even flinch. Consider these tiny little interactions you and your party will have. Consider your character. Like what, you come across an ocean or something. What is your character's reaction to the ocean? It could be very different for many different characters. Speaking of your character's origin, their voice, if you decide to go that path. Some people don't like to voice their characters, but I'm of the kind who likes to. So when voicing your character, consider their accent. Now, you don't have to be a voice actor who's great at accents, right? I am an amateur, right? I don't do voice acting professionally, but I can put on a bit of a voice. If you're playing a player character, ask your dungeon master where your character's from and what accent they have. Say you're playing a dwarf that might be in the mountains. You could go with the Scottish accent, or maybe your dungeon master has something else in mind. You can kind of work it out together on what accent you want. Also consider the speech pattern of your character. You don't have to go too in-depth with this, right? Especially if you make a character that already hits kind of close to the home. But like I mentioned before, the two examples I gave, the nobleman and the rogue thief who's lived on the streets, maybe the pompous nobleman speaks with very clear voice. He knows exactly what he's saying at all times. But maybe the rogue uses a lot of slang. He's a bit of a man. He talks a lot like this. It's kind of hard to understand him sometimes. That can add a lot of just character to your character very quickly with very little effort. Next tip. Get into your character's mindset. And that seems pretty obvious, right? You're probably wondering, what do you mean by that? Let me tell you what I mean by that. Think about it. It's very easy to zone out when playing Dungeons & Dragons, and maybe, you come across something that to you is very normal, and you don't react to it at all, in character or out of character, really. You're just like, oh, it happened. It's there. It's going on. But think about it. If you're playing a dwarf who's never left their mountain home, deep under the ground, and, they're evacuated from their home one day, and they see the ocean. Can you imagine that? Imagine never seeing the ocean before and then seeing it. Especially a dwarf whose family probably never saw the ocean either. It might be just shocking in general to see like the ocean or even grassy plains. Just imagine how shocked your character would be to see different things they may have never seen before. Last thing I gotta say about improving your roleplay. You do not need to keep your character's personality set in stone. Say your nobleman, pompous nobleman, starts out really holier than thou. He thinks he's better than everyone. Perhaps after months or years of being down the dirt, punching monsters and doing whatever your dungeon master set out for you. Or perhaps this is an NPC who's just followed the party along. Maybe they have a new outlook on life. Maybe they're a little less pompous and they understand people. They understand the struggle of life. Not everything can be given to people freely. And, at the end, instead of being all holier than thou, they are more, I can be holier than thou, but should I? Have your character ask themselves questions when hit with moral phenomena that goes against what they're used to. Perhaps the lawful good paladin comes across a dilemma that cannot be solved in a lawful good way, but they deem the only possible manner of solving the issue is of going something a little more neutral or even a little evil. But if they're doing it for the greater good, is it still good? Also, if you're not having fun with your character, I mentioned this in a different video, swap them out. It can be very hard to roleplay a character you are not having fun with. Think about it. If you're bored, where none of that enthusiasm of your roleplay being the short dwarf with the big axe, none of that's going to come through. You want to make sure you're having fun, or the roleplay isn't going to be fun either. I hope you found this video insightful, helpful. The sun just disappeared apparently. I wish you all a good night, evening, morning, what have you. Adios.